Hi, I'm going to talk about the Old Testament of the Bible and being vegan. In my last video I was talking about the creation story, the first 8 chapters of Genesis, and how we're instructed to eat plants when we're made in God's image, when we are created in God's image, and a whole 8 chapters after that. Not eating meat. Something happens in Genesis 9. And I'm not going to sugarcoat any of these things, the quotations people say to me when I talk about being vegan myself. Genesis 9, Leviticus, the 10 Commandments, and Jeremiah. So what happens in Genesis 8? It talks about how we're made in God's image, and then a lot of the time it's talking after that about many generations that have passed, sons and descendants. What does that mean? It means a long time has passed. A long time of generations, more than 1,000 years of people living, being vegan. What does that mean? It means that eating flesh was not something that happened at the fall. What's the fall? The fall was the eating of the apple from the tree of knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil. Even after that, thousands of years of generations of people being vegan. So what did happen that stopped this? A climate emergency, a flood. Yes, Noah's the flood, the story of Noah and the flood. And he had lived for 600 years, it says, before the flood. God instructed him to save the animals, which he did, along with himself, in the same boat. The dove flew, and it came back with a twig, so they said, there must be land, the water must be going down because there's a tree with a twig. What does this tell us? That originally there were trees and fruit like the Garden of Eden before the flood. No wonder they were vegan. And the waters went down. So how much fruit would have been left on the trees? So why did this law, why did it happen that they started to eat the flesh? Well, we look at the original definition of veganism. It's not to exploit animals whenever necessary. Could have been. There was no fruit, there was no vegetation to eat, and it would have meant starving to death. So one can see how that happened. But this law about eating flesh was not ever intended to be followed today. It was an emergency measure. So what was set in stone? The 10 Commandments. Honour the Lord God, honour your father and mother. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not covet. Do not commit adultery. These were the commandments that were set in stone. And then people talk about Leviticus and the laws of eating animals who have cloven hooves and chew the cud. These laws weren't set in stone. These laws came when the Israelites escaped slavery. Another emergency situation. One can see what's happening in the story. There were priests of Levi, Leviticus. There were priests in that tradition that came after in the Bible that changed these laws in the Old Testament of the Bible. And what makes me sad is that even today they don't even stick to these primitive laws, because pigs have cloven hooves but don't chew the cud. So firstly, it's not even stuck to, and secondly, there's no need to, and thirdly, there are priests that came after. These laws were not set in stone. They were made, again, in a time of emergency after slavery. And as I said, I want to look at the book of Jeremiah. So I'm going to read this. What fault did your forefathers find in me, that they wandered far from me, pursuing empty phantoms, themselves becoming empty? They did not ask, where's the Lord who brought us out of Egypt, led us through the wilderness, through a country of deserts and shifting sands, a country barren and ill-omened, where no man ever trod, no man made his home. I brought you to a fruitful land, to enjoy its fruit and the goodness in it. But when you entered upon it, you defiled it and made the home I gave you loathsome. The priests no longer asked, where is the Lord? Verses 5 to 7. Now what is that saying? When they came out of Egypt and made these laws about sacrifice, this did not solve anything. The Lord, the basis, is in the 10 Commandments and the first 8 books of Genesis. The first 8 chapters of Genesis. Thank you.